raw agricultural commodities into consumers' hands. How does that work? What does that look like? And can we create more avenues for farmers and ranchers to get into markets? I think that's going to be one of the great outcomes of this COVID. I mean, COVID's a disaster, absolutely. But out of these challenges, can we find some bright spots? Can we say, hey, this taught us some things about how disconnected our market culture. It's going to put some pressure on me to find new ways to market my product. And yeah, some folks are going to get hurt. If you can't adapt a little bit, if you can't think about being innovative, then you're going to maybe have some issues. But it's going to definitely, out of these challenges, hopefully we can find some bright spots.
So just forgive me if I'm repeating here. I just want to make sure I'm understanding things. So was the biggest issue that we have a very large scale centralized processing industry, have so few facilities, and then they were hit by COVID, that industry?
We don't, but what we have is we have such a large population base, and we have so much going on in the export market that these large plants have captured a lot, and because of the efficiency of these large plants, they've captured so much of the market share. And probably 30, 40 head of beef locally to good customers. But we can't disassemble these large packing plants and turn them into 10 small regional processors. It's not as efficient. And so what we have to do is we have to figure out ways to shorten those gaps between you and the processor, and shorten the gaps between the processor and the retailers, and try to find ways to be more efficient in that. Yes, the bulk of our product does go through large manufacturing facilities, no doubt about it, Jay. But there are still opportunities at a lower level, at a smaller level, with small regional facilities, and those facilities are out there. But the system that we've built, the system that's kind of inherent to our country right now, is this fantastic producer of large volumes of reasonably priced food, is this larger manufacturing system. When that system goes awry, yeah, it affects a lot of people.
Okay, so we're seeing a resurgence of COVID, or at least, depending upon what news media you listen to and so on, either it's resurging or it's just that we're doing more testing. Who knows?
Right.
But we're seeing something happen. It seems like it's coming back, and it seems to be pretty rabid, or growing quickly out there.
Sure.
How do you think we're going to run into problems again with the meat supply system?
I don't think maybe a little bit, but I think it would, if it does, it's going to be at a much lower level. I don't think that the average consumer would ever even notice. Farmers and ranchers may get some pushback once again. If this thing expands and keeps expanding the way it has, what we're seeing is, once again, disruption on the food service side of it. So like when Arizona and California, Texas, Florida, some of those states had opened up their restaurants, COVID started to become more prevalent, and now they're starting to shut those back down. So I work for a meat company. One of my clients is a bison facility, as you know, and we were just starting to get some traction back into food service, and now some of those accounts have closed back down, or they've shut back down, they've idled back again. So now we're back into retail. Retail doesn't have as much margin as food service, just for the folks out there to know. And so, yeah, we're seeing some of that. Now, disruption in the plants, I don't think that's going to happen. I think these big companies have all got a handle on that. Once again, we're doing more social distancing. There's been some good programs out there that the USDA has come out with, particularly in our meat plants, helped us get some space in between workers, helped us finance some of these things that need to be done, so that, when folks come into the plant, when this thing first hit in March and April, we didn't know what to do. It was, we were kind of, blindfolded to everything, just trying to feel our way through all of this. Now we know that everybody gets their temperature gets checked before they can come into the facility. Everybody has his temperature is scanned. So nobody with a fever is allowed into a facility. We wear personal protective equipment. We have face masks. We wear masks over our nose and mouths, and we also wear face shields when working in close proximity with somebody next to us. We do those things, and so hopefully that will take away that kick. You know, that big, oh gosh, we had 8 or 9 plants that had to idle back or close or had to take a shift offline because we were losing workers. Hopefully those things are behind us, and we're now better prepared. We've got better information. We've got better plans in place. We've all got our COVID emergency response plans on all our plants, so we know what to do should that escalate again. I think the disruption is going to be over on the marketing side, not necessarily in the manufacturing side.
Okay. I don't know, maybe this is going to sound like a harsh question, maybe. Has this presented an opportunity for us here in the Northeast, New York State, the North Country? Has this ripple effect that went through the livestock industry, does that create opportunity for us?
Well, like I alluded to a little bit, I mean, I don't want to say opportunity might not be the best, but definitely anytime you apply pressure to a system, you know, some folks are going to come out of it in better shape, some folks are going to come out of it in worse shape. So you have the opportunity as producers to look at this, and I know it hurts. I mean, I'm hurting too on our farm. You know, we're looking at the prices for our cattle, and we're looking at some of the things that we got going on. Yeah, it can definitely be a painful experience, but I'll just share with you what we're doing right now. So what we're doing on our beef cattle farm is we're looking at strategic partnerships now. So we're working on getting certified to be humane handling. So we're going to have that in place. We're also going to a non-hormone treated cattle program. So we're trying to add value that way. Because of what's going on with the market disruption, we're trying to position ourselves to have a competitive advantage against other producers in the system. So those are opportunities now in New York. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't studied the politics in New York and what's going on other than watching Fox News and MSNBC, and one tells me the governor is terrible and the other tells me the governor is the best thing ever. So I tend to not take either one at face value. But we do know you guys have tremendous challenges in that part of the world and tremendous disruptions in your marketplace, undoubtedly. And so what would be the opportunities there? The opportunities would be to look deep inside of your business model. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What are some places that I can create more margin? How can we utilize this kind of tragedy or these challenges to better refine our business model, to see what we're doing and how do we do it a little bit better? I guess that would be what I would encourage everybody to do. And I know we're all doing that, but are we doing it on a gross level? Are we just talking about cash in, cash out? Or are we specifically looking at, hey, what am I producing? If you're simply producing commodity product up in the situation, commodity by definition is a break-even proposition. A commodity market's built to be break-even. Are you trying to ask, how am I going to break out of this commodity system and create more value on my farm and ranch? Those are the questions that you should be asking yourself.
Okay. So let's change over to talking about farms that might be interested in raising livestock then. What barriers are those farms going to face? Raising livestock, interested in raising livestock, or already doing it, what are some of the barriers that they may face, and how do they overcome those barriers?
You know, what are some of the barriers? So if you've got an agronomic, if you're based in agronomic, let's say you're raising corn and soybeans and some sort of wheat or something like that in a rotation, how do you enter into the livestock business? Well, I would enter into it carefully. I would think and understand what your product's going to be. If your product's simply going to be feeder cattle, then go into that with that feeder cattle. How do I market these feeder cattle? How do I create relationships in that? If you want to get into a local food business, well, now your end product is different. What is my end product? End product is going to be a meat product. Well, now that gets to be a lot more complicated with marketing. Think about some things though too about the benefits of livestock on a farm. Think about what the return might be for having grazing pressure in a field, having extra fertilizer. How can we utilize manure? How can we utilize rotational grazing? How can we do some of those things to create more value to my agronomic operation, whether it be corn, soybeans, or whatever you might be raising in that part of the world. So the barriers for any livestock operation, the big barrier is always capital. How do we come up with dollars and cents? I've never run a plan yet where I had to borrow 100% of a cow's price where she can pay for herself. So you got to think about that. And just like anything else, anytime you're trying to build a business, expand a business, what are your capital needs? That's really the big thing.
Can I just, what you just said, would you explain that a little bit further? Because, I'm not in the business directly. So if you could explain that a little bit further, what you just said.
As far as the cattle?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the exact phrase you used, but you were talking about, the capital and, the financing the cow doesn't pay.
Right.
You've never done a plan.
Right. So what I'm saying is that I've never run a model where I went out and borrowed 100% of a cow's initial value of a herd of cows. So let's say you're going to buy 100 cows, and you go out and let's say the cows are going to cost you $1,500. I'm going to go out and borrow $150,000 to buy those cows, making that payment, and then also running the cow, paying the land, paying the taxes, paying the labor. That's almost always a recipe for being in servitude to the bank, basically for the rest of your life. So you have to look at that. I'm not saying there's not paths there. There's not ways to do that, but it's definitely a challenge. So look at what your capital position is. Look what your equity position is in the animals. If you've got a cow leveraged at 100% of her value, it's very tough to create wealth out of that animal. It just is. Now, a lot of young guys are just going to throw their hands up in the air and say, well, hell, I don't have any money. How else do I do it? But your goal then is to try to find ways to get that cow to not be 100% leveraged. That's what I was saying. So it can be really difficult, particularly when you have these ups and downs through the cattle cycle. A few years ago, bred cows were bringing $2,000 to $3,000. Well, now they're bringing $1,200. Not only did she depreciate like a rocket ship just going down a hill, but cattle markets are now about 2/3 of what they were at that time as well. So it's really tough to have an animal like that 100% leverage and then still find ways to create wealth out of that.
Okay. One of the things that that we've talked about a lot, and you and I have talked about a lot, is livestock processing. You've helped us put together a feasibility study for what we call a medium-sized meat processing facility. But I'm also getting a lot of push, if you will, that we need more smaller livestock processing here in New York State, especially in the central and northern New York region. What are your thoughts on the needs for livestock processing with what you learned? Does it make sense to be looking at both small livestock facilities and that medium livestock facility? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, based on where you guys are, and without divulging too much of what we did in the study, but what we found out was that in that part of the world, the lack of regional processing definitely provided an opportunity to at least have that conversation. You should have that conversation about that mid-sized regional facility with the capacity to kill more than maybe a couple hundred a day or something like that. I don't know, what that numbers actually look like right now, but yes, we do need more regional livestock slaughter facilities, particularly in the East. Almost all of those regional facilities are either in the Midwest or Pennsylvania. So that's what we've got. And we definitely could use more facilities like that. But the small regional or the small local abattoirs are incredibly important. So what we have now is we've got one great thing about being in the food business is that we're always making more consumers. Our population continues to grow, so we always have more consumers for our products. And those consumers are always, they're diversified. They got diversified sense of what's right and wrong, what they want to eat, what they don't want to eat, what their income levels are, what they're willing to pay for a hamburger, or what they're not willing to pay for a can of beans. So the local side of that means that can you find those consumers? There are going to continue to be more and more consumers out there that have the wherewithal to want to buy locally and want to connect more with their producer. And we're even seeing that, consumers that traditionally shopped exclusively in the commodity side in the supermarket, they're now starting to ask questions. Where is my food coming from? Where is my food coming from? Some of that's rhetoric from anti-agricultural folks that drive that conversation, but there's a real movement out there of folks that are trying to become healthier. They're trying to be more aware, and that segment of the population continues to grow. So they want to have a relationship with meat. I told you we have a small meat business. Every one of my customers, I really don't reach out to folks. They've reached out to me and say, hey, I'd like to know where my hamburger comes from. I'd like to have a relationship with my supplier. And I think it's better for my family. I think it's better for my health. I think it's just from a sense of good being too, to understand. And then how do you raise your cattle? Because we hear some crazy things. Well, we raise our cattle. We handle our cattle humanely. One of the talked about getting a certification now for that, so we can go into the commodity marketplace with that. But yeah, so we have a need for both, particularly in your part of the world. When we did look at the competition was pretty scarce in northern New York, particularly for slaughter facilities. You definitely have a need in that part of the world for more, especially small scale local abattoirs that can butcher a cow or butcher a couple of steers, butcher some hogs for some of your local folks, and then even sell that product into the marketplace or return that product back to family and friends if that's what needs to be. But we just don't have that. Even in North Dakota, where we're fairly rural and we've got a lot of livestock, we have a tremendous need for more local kill facilities here. Right now, we're out to next June in terms of slots. If you needed to harvest an animal now, you wouldn't be able to get them in here. So you'd have several month wait before you could get an animal in.
I think we're in the same situation. I've heard, 4 or 5 months, and certainly if there's any farms out there that want to share how far out they are, put it in the question and answer. Just indicate how far out you are in scheduling your animals, because I think we're in that same boat. At least 4 to 5 months is what I've heard. So,
sure.
One question that's come up from our participants that I'm going to throw at you, I'm not sure if you'll know this answer or not, is with our fast-growing Muslim population, not necessarily just in Jefferson County, but the surrounding region. What species would you target? Beef, lamb, goat, chicken? Do you have a handle on that, Travis?
Small ruminants would be where you'd start, probably with the Muslim. If you were going to try to target that population, I'd start with goats and lambs. That's very traditional for them. But just like any other consumer base, just listen to their needs. Have that conversation. I'd encourage the folks that are on the call and listening right now, don't do the build it and they will come model. Don't go down that road without first doing some investigation into what do some of our local, what do some of those folks really want from you, and then try to produce a product that'll meet their needs. So, but I based on my experience, I'd start with small ruminants. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to back up real quickly to a question just popped in my mind. To the medium-sized facility that we've talked about, is it possible to take that medium-sized facility and provide small-scale processing as well? Does that make sense?
We've had that conversation. It's not impossible, but it does present a challenge. to just to the operations of the facility. You know, when you're in that medium-sized facility, you're producing a specific way, and you're producing into some sort of a program, whether it's the commodity market, or maybe perhaps you've got relationships with retailers and wholesalers, and you got to produce in a specific way. So then if you start bringing in custom, or bringing in smaller to do specific custom, now we've got a segregation. We've got a segregation of food safety requirements. We've got a segregation of packaging and boxing, and how do we keep that separate in the cooler? It's not impossible. It certainly can be done. Our bison facility, we kill about 200 to 250 head a week now. We still occasionally do some custom for some of our good producers. They say, hey, we want to take 2 head home. We brought you 50 head, but we're going to take 2 of those home. Can we do it? Can we cut it in a specific way? Yes, we can, but it is a challenge. Once we get into the fabrication, to say, hey, well, how would you like this cut? Do you want T-bones, or do you want strips and tenderloins? What do you want? When we're already producing in a certain way for certain customers. So that's the challenge in that. Is it's more from a logistics standpoint inside the facility.
I've been waiting for my shipment of bison strips, Travis, just saying.
You know, I just ordered a bunch. I'll get you, I it's done. I just got a bunch that I'll send you out a bunch, promise.
No, you can't do that, but the thought is appreciated. So if you happen to show up and you want to barbecue some, we could do that.
Right,
so.
right.
And just, I did get a note from one of our farms here. They're scheduled out to January and February. Also, I want to point out, and I'm going to say this directly, Mike Knuckles from Cornell Cooperative Extension put a message here. Cornell University Small Farms Program is conducting a survey on the need for slaughterhouses in New York State. He says there's a survey link. I'm going to ask Mike to email that to me, and I will forward that out to all of the participants on the call today. So Mike, please, I hope you heard that. Please send me that link and I'll forward that out to everybody. Just had another question pop in, Travis. When a group of us were in New York City, we heard there is a desire for kosher meat. Do you have experience with this type of processing?
I do have a little bit. That have run the kosher program. So yeah, I do have a little bit of experience. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but just to say, you have to be certified with one. There's a couple of groups out there in that community that certify your facility. You have to go through USDA and get some additional certification, or get some basically some relaxation of some of the rules for religious and ritual slaughter, which are outside of some of the regulations for humane slaughter because of the way kosher is harvested. And then you have to have some rabbis in the facility, and they gotta do their inspections as well and sign off on it. It's not terribly invasive. There is an opportunity there, certainly. I know one of the facilities in South Dakota that I helped a couple of years ago, they kind of went from the commodity system almost to a complete kosher system, and there was just more margin in it, just because there's a lot of folks out there looking for kosher products, and just not a lot of plants that go down that road because of the ritualistic slaughter. So.
And I just got a question in looking for your comments on this. It's from Cornell University. Work we have done on a survey of small packers in New York and New England. What we found was that the packers can only process 50% of what they kill. This tells us that the constraint is processing and cooling more so than, more small packers. Any comments on that? And I can repeat that if you want me to, Travis.
No, you actually popped up here. I've got the Q&A up. I'm not sure what Michael's getting at when he says we found that packers can only percent of what they're talking about, what the yield is on the animals. I don't know what, if he could maybe type back in and and give us a better indication of what he's trying to, what he meant by that. When you say you can only process 50% of what they kill, are you talking about 50% of animals? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. Or are you talking about you're only getting 50% of what of the weight going in is coming out, or something like that? So if Michael could clarify that a little bit and give me a little better idea, then I can address that. So.
Okay. And while he's doing that, so Mike, you heard Travis, he'd like a little bit more clarification. While you're providing that clarification, I'll move on to another question that I have. And that is, you know, looking at the meat and food industry, how is it going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, you know, that's always a $64,000 question. If I knew that, I wouldn't tell you guys, because then I wouldn't be able to capture the value in that. So what we're seeing now, once again, we talked a little bit about consumers having. You're going to see both things expand. So what we've got this consumer base out there, the population of consumers, and you've got consumers that are very price conscious. You've got consumers that want to know more about where their product comes from. You've got consumers that have real concerns about just livestock production in general. None of those populations, none of those segments of population are going to go away in any way, shape, or form. They're going to continue to grow and evolve. I think we're going to see certain things happen in agriculture. I think you're going to continue to see pressure on conventional production methods. And when I say things like that, I'll give you an example. Just this year, the state, you know, they banned dicamba sales and use in certain strains of soybeans and the extended soybeans up here. Well, that not necessarily based on sound science, but based on public pressure, public perception, and things like that. We're going to continue to see those types of pressures in agriculture. Growth hormones, antibiotic use. They redid the veterinary feed directive here in half a dozen years or so. Can't use subtherapeutic antibiotics in the production of feeder fat cattle anymore. You're going to continue to see those things evolve, and we'll continue to push back as an industry, but we have to be prepared for those things to come at us from kind of the regulatory and the industry side. What we need to do then is how do we adapt to that? And I mentioned that. So we're working now on our non-hormone treated cattle protocol, so that we have a segment of our cattle that will be ready for those markets, because those markets are coming at us, and those markets are going to continue to expand. You're going to see hopefully a real push towards the regenerative agriculture platform. Now, we haven't talked about that, Jay, but it's catching a lot of wind up here in the northern plains. Folks that are actually being more concerned about soil health, how the impact of livestock and grazing livestock on land impacts soil health, healthy soils, healthy food, more nutrient dense foods, and the ability to market then your products as a regenerative rancher or regenerative farmer. So there's some of those things that are coming at us. We're going to continue to evolve. We're going to continue to evolve as an industry. I think the large farmers, those folks that are very commodity driven, they'll continue to be commodity driven. But I think the opportunities for those of us that want to define a little bit better about what our products are, they're going to continue to expand as well. So I'll have the opportunity to work directly with more consumers, more of our stakeholders in this business. But yeah, and the other thing about it, technology. There's going to be a big influx of technology coming our way. What we haven't had in agriculture, particularly in the livestock side, is a lot of applications out there, you know, in the cloud, in that space for us to utilize. Those things are coming. I bet I've seen in the past year to 18 months, a dozen or more livestock operational applications that are either in test or are getting released. And then we'll use that technology then to also communicate with our consumers. But we'll have what we're doing in real time. We can choose what we want to share or not. So there's going to be all kinds of interesting ways for us to continue to evolve, to continue to innovate in agriculture. But the big key is how do we create that relationship all the way through that supply chain to the consumer, so the consumer is always confident what they're getting is the best for them. I think that's the evolution that we're going to see in the next 5 or 10 years.
Okay. I'm going to back up to the question from Mike. Betsy from Cornell Cooperative Extension provided what she believes is a clarification. Let's see.
I got you.
You've got it. Have the capacity to kill more than the capacity to process. Does that make? Does that? Oh, there's
right.
Mike's,
I got you now. Yep. That does help. Well,
and Mike's got a clarification down there as well, Travis, right below that.
I see that now. So if we were to help our packers add infrastructure to process, you know, I've never worked with a facility, and this is yet, where we've had that issue where our processing is actually a constraint to our ability to slaughter. Usually facilities are set up with both ends in mind. But yes, I mean, if that is the case, then for sure. And the thing is that there are a lot of processing only facilities out there, not necessarily that cut steaks and roasts, although those are out there too, but that do grinding, do further processing, do value added, they also do value added. Didn't want to talk about do, but I guess it's the way it goes.
It always comes up
right,
at lunchtime.
Always an S show around here, I know that. So for sure. So if you have that facility though, then I guess my question would be is, do we need to add a separate processor, or should we have some programs to go into that processor and say, hey, how can we get rid of these bottlenecks so that we can get more animals through that side of it? Do we need to add processing floor space? Do we need to add equipment? Those things would certainly be how I would address that. Yeah. So back to Michael's question, for sure, if that's the case, if you have that facility that has the ability to kill 10 head a day, but only has the ability to process 5, yeah, then we definitely need to work with those facilities and say, hey, let's get you up to snuff so that we can continue to keep animals working through the system. Yeah.
You know, a lot of economic development agencies are starting to come on. I shouldn't say a lot, but more and more economic development agencies are starting to come online, recognizing the importance of agriculture in both their local community and their regional communities. And so I would encourage everybody on here to enlist local economic development agencies to be part of trying to look at that bottleneck and see if there's a way that we can help incentivize, you know, that growth in that particular facility. Now, maybe it's a management issue where the owner operator doesn't have the interest in further processing. If that's the case, then you know there's other services that need to be provided. But if it's a case of somebody has that interest, but not sure how they're going to make it work, I would encourage everybody on the call to reach out to their economic development agencies. I know we would jump at the chance if we had a processor that, you know, if we had a kill facility that said, hey, we'd like to expand, we would be all over it trying to work with our partners to help that facility grow. Any thoughts on that, Travis? Or
oh, absolutely. We're in the, you know, there are programs out there now. I'm a much bigger proponent of private solutions to free market problems like this. Hopefully the free market will do what it's supposed to do, which is provide economic incentives for us to expand processing and do those types of things. But the thing is that don't feel like you guys are in a vacuum on this. So you can, there's lots of expertise out there. There's lots of folks that you can talk to. Be collective in this if you can. There's folks out there doing it. And one thing about those of us in agriculture, are smart enough to keep secrets to ourselves when we're being successful out there and say, hey, come on, let's do this together. So just ask good questions. Don't feel like that there's not folks out there that are willing to help. There are a lot of folks out there that we want agriculture to be successful. We want small processors. We want the price of corn to be higher for our corn growers. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that through adding value to livestock. How do we add value to livestock? Well, we have to process them at a higher point, at a higher price point. We have to get more money flowing back through the system. Once we do that, then we can pay more for the corn and we can create more opportunities for our grain growers. There's a tremendous synergy there that exists through this, and livestock are such an important component of it. So absolutely, I mean, work together, try to find solutions that are collective, and know that there are programs out there, and there's a lot of information out there for folks that are looking to expand or looking to get into this business.
And I'll just like economic development agencies and other organizations, if there's somebody out there that wants to expand or start livestock processing and so on, there's a whole team of people that will provide the technical assistance, the economic assistance, and so on to make that happen. Just make a phone call, and there'll be a bunch of people to chime in and try to help. Want to move on. This is going to be a interesting response that I'm looking forward to. How big of an impact do you think the plant-based meat substitutes will have on the livestock industry?
Well, I honestly don't think financially, economically, it's going to be too bad. I'm probably in the minority on that. I know I do get a lot of questions about what are we doing about this Impossible Burger? What are we doing about Burger King? What are we doing about this? Well, my contention is that, just like I said a little bit ago, I think we let the free market system work itself out. We produce a better product than they do. It's not only better and tastes better, it's healthier. It doesn't have 45 ingredients. Some of those being made in a flask in a lab. And we just tell our story about what we're doing. We're producing incredibly nutritious food. We're doing it in a very sustainable and holistic manner. And we'll kind of let the chips fall where they may. I like having that challenge, to be honest with you, Jay. I think it's a great challenge for problems with some of these folks trying to get into this marketplace. What I don't have time for, though, are the lies and innuendos that some of these companies will perpetrate to try to sell and market product. And so our job in the livestock industry then is just to say, listen, you're claiming that you're more environmentally sensitive than a beef animal. That's bogus. That's absolutely BS. Have those conversations, tell our story, make sure the consumers know what's supposed to be going on, and then let them figure it out on their own. I know there's a lot of university professors and folks out there that have done studies that claim that this plant-based thing is going to just continue to expand and be a $1 trillion business. I don't think it's going to really cut into our business that much at all. Maybe a little bit. The only people that are going to that product right now are vegetarian and vegan, though. Nobody who actually eats a burger goes into Burger King, picks up one of those burgers, eats it, and goes, well, I think I'll do that again. Almost everybody that eats meat on a regular basis tries to substitute, goes, I think I'll go back and eat my beef because it's just so much better, right? Exactly. I've tried it. Personal opinion, and I think I can say this on here, I think it tastes like it's just, it's not good at all. It's cardboard. That's as far as I'm concerned. It's salted cardboard is what it is to me. So that's my experience. But I think from an industry standpoint too, that's kind of what we're taking. We're not going out and trying to run Impossible or Beyond into the ground or do anything. We'll let the market take care of it. And we'll take that as a challenge to keep producing really great tasting, really healthy, really safe product. And we'll let the consumers decide. And I think at the end, we'll win that battle without putting too much time and effort into it.
Switch gears, we got a question from my good friend Marty down there in Oneida County. He was asking what happened globally that the cow and, well, you see it, cow and steer hide market is so bad.
Right. China. It all boils down to we just lost our export market on hides into China. Most of the tanneries in this part of the world have closed over time. That's the big thing that's happened. And I agree, you're 100% correct. Hides are worth nothing right now. And there's a tragedy at the bison plant. We're taking 3 side dumps a week over to the landfill of hides. Beautiful bison hides, they're worth 0. We can't get anybody to even give us a sniff on them. It's really tough right now, but it's trade. It's one of the unfortunate consequences of these trade imbalances that the current administration is trying to get fixed. And so once things start to open up a little bit and we're able to add some value into those hides, hopefully that will come back up. But yeah, it's actually China has quit taking hides, and that's what's happening. So.
Last question, Travis, and you've been fantastic. Thank you for being so responsive to all of our questions. The last question, it's pretty broad. How should our farms here in New York prepare or position themselves for that path to 2025?
Just get informed. That's to me like a lot of the producers I work with. They work so hard in their business. They get up early. They work hard all day. They come in late. They've got church board and everything else they got to get to, and it's hard for them to stay informed. Stay informed about what's going on. Think about how can I produce a product that's going to appeal to a broader base of consumers, if that's you're into, or maybe a niche market of some kind. Get prepared for these disruptions in this marketplace. The price of livestock is going to continue to go up and down and up and down. Those cycles are there. They're going to be there forever. How do you create more price stability within your operation? Sit down and think about that, and then have those conversations with your fellow producers. What are you doing? How are we working through these issues of these price fluctuations? And then also get a handle on your cost of production. I know that's preaching to the choir, but do that. Understand what gross margin is and get prepared for some of this stuff. We're going to always have these disruptions in consumers, disruptions in logistics, hopefully not like we had in March and April of this year, but be prepared for some of those disruptions and try to get yourself into a place where they're not going to affect you as much. I do believe there's a lot of value and I do believe there's a lot of value going to be coming out of consumers that want to know, are we doing things right? So think about that. I think that's how you can level some of that out and create, these systems where you have a story to tell to consumers, and that story is one that's positive, and that'll appeal to a lot broader segment of the marketplace. So that's what I would do, and that's what we're doing on our range, trying to make sure that we've got products that are easily marketable. So.
All right, excellent. Well, Mike, Travis, we are just about out of time here. Want to thank you, sir, for doing this today. You are kickoff. You are our experimental edition of the Farmers Luncheon webinars. So thank you very much. For our participants, lots of great questions out there. I'm going to be emailing you a very, very short evaluation, 3 questions. If when you receive that, you would take the time to fill it out and respond, I greatly appreciate it. Our next webinar is on August 27th at noon. Right now, I'm communicating with a person who is an expert in international trade and agriculture. He has indicated an interest. We just haven't confirmed it yet. So hopefully within the next day or 2, I'll be able to send out a notice to all of you that we will have a speaker talking about international trade. Always very welcome to hear your ideas on speakers. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with me and say, hey, Jay, here's a great idea, here's a great speaker, and so on. Travis, really enjoyed your staying with us today. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and I hope it was worth our time.
All right, and now I got to run to a meeting on meat processing. So of all things to have a meeting on, follow up our webinar here. Have a great day, everybody. Travis, have a great day. Thank you very much for joining us, and take care, folks. Bye-bye.